Ouija boards have been used to communicate with the other side for a number of years, though the idea of communication with demons and spirits goes back in time to way before Ouija boards existed. In today's video, we will be starting things off with a story of a ritual involving a witch. Then we will be delving into a story about Ouija boards. And lastly, closing things off with a short true story of my own. The writers of the first two stories can be found in the description. A huge thank you to them for allowing me to share their stories. Remember, you can send in your own story to rylhstories@gmail.com if you'd like to have it featured on the channel. Likes and comments are always appreciated. Subscribing if you're new is as well. Enjoy the stories, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. You've heard the story already, though you might not even know it. Around a campfire, maybe even on Halloween, people tell a tale of the Naked Witch. Granted, it may have had another name, but the story is the same. Lost for one reason or another, a wayward camper finds themselves tromping through the wilderness with nothing but the pack on their shoulders, and a flashlight in their hands. They stumble over roots and rocks. They trudge up hills and under fallen trees, in search of a campsite or any semblance of a well-weathered path to get their bearings. It is dark, and the lost soul starts to panic. Then the stories diverge a bit. In one version, the camper plucks up some courage, perhaps due to some forewarning, or some previously acquired wilderness survival skills. The panic is processed and converted into a stimulant that heightens the senses. Makes the mind clear. The camper's vision adjusts to the oppressive darkness. Their ears pick up some slack and fine tune, able to hear even the slightest crunch of leaves or the muffled, staccato snap of a cracked tree limb. We are animals, after all. We are made to survive, and the animal ignorant to danger isn't always the one that's worse off. It is these poor fools that I pity most. On the other side of the coin, the camper loses it. They run and scream. Fear and the involuntary reflex to dissociate takes over. They are phantoms, puppeted by synapses and chemicals, completely out of control, with their brains shrouded by adrenaline. The world blurs and evolution takes over. You'll hear words like running from nothing and feels like something is behind them when this version is being told. Then the stories converge again. Whether it is a torch, a flashlight, a lamp, perhaps even a single lighter, it will inevitably go out. The reasons may be different. A heavy rain began to fall, or they trip and it falls into a ditch, or what have you. But that is all just fluff. The point is the darkness wins, and the real story is about to begin. A strange thing happens, though, in this phase of the story. There is a jump, and something begins chasing the camper. They run again, blind and alone, through the darkness. They cross a stream with the creature hot on their heels. Then, poof, they break through the tree line, only to realize they are back at camp or on the trail with neither sight nor sound of their pursuer. Isn't it strange that no one seems to question that jump? One might suspect the lapse would hold some valuable insight into the situation, but no one inquires. No one asks for more details, because the story is rolling. Everyone wants to see how things will shake out. Everyone wants to know what happens next. And the trick is to know what happens before. I'm here to help you do both by filling in that gap, that lapse, the whole story. But you have to live the story yourself to truly understand. Right about now is the time where you decide if you are going to click away, or you are going to continue onward with my instructions. You are already hungry for a twist, or a morale. You want some foreshadowing so you can tell yourself you knew it. I will tell you 3 things now. 1, there is no twist. This will be instructional. I don't know about you, but I have never gotten to the end of an IKEA chair instruction book to find that I have accidentally assembled a new car. You know the ending already. It ends with you back at camp, hopefully. Safe and sound, but different. 2. You are either curious or stupid enough to get this far, and you are just that kind of person to see this through to the end, to know what happens next. Though I should also say, you may come to regret that reality. 3. The story has already begun. Step 1. Prep. Like any good romp in the forest, you would be wise to bring some basic supplies with you. Firstly, you are going to need some woods to wander around in. Preferably the place of your choosing should be secluded to some degree, far from any major road and free from too much foot traffic during the night. It is highly recommended that you bring sturdy, water-resistant footwear, as you might find yourself crossing some unexpectedly rough terrain. Bring a flashlight or a lantern of some kind as well, but know that if everything goes correctly, it will wind up either lost or broken. Lastly, taking a simple, sturdy weapon with you might prove to be useful for reasons you will understand in a bit. Things you should not bring: any recording device, your phone, GPS devices, cameras, expensive or emotionally significant items, and most importantly, company. Step 2. Getting lost. After prepping, what follows is a reverse scavenger hunt of sorts. Instead of trying to find something, you are trying to get lost so you can be found. Choosing a rainy or new moon night will aid you in getting lost, especially if you are somewhat familiar with the area. Begin your walk after sundown and head into the densest portion of the woods. The Naked Witch already knows you are there, but she wants you to work for your prize. The good thing about this endeavor is that most people who are found by the Naked Witch didn't even know she existed. They just assume they stumbled across something inexpiable. Try your best to focus on walking and paying attention to your senses. Acknowledge the soundscape. Take note of particular smells. Follow your gut. Start making a mental map of all your senses. While this will be the easiest portion of your journey, it is the step that is most often forgotten or neglected. You know what it feels like to be lost, but that feeling is different for each individual. Being lost is a pretty polar state. Either you are or you aren't. Once you are, proceed to step 3. Step 3. Getting found. As stated earlier, getting found is something that can happen by chance once the Naked Witch knows you are present. But the more aware you can be during the whole adventure, the better. You can know for certain that things are going as they should by following signs. The single caw of a crow, seeing faint lights in the corner of your eye, a whole body chill even in warm weather, the feeling of being watched or pursued, a heaviness in the eyes and legs, shortness of breath, the sound of footfall nearby. In some rare cases, visions of full-body apparitions, disembodied whispering, and a sickening, rotting smell may occur. Regardless, fear will begin to set in, and it is time to run. Discard your lights and run. You are, in fact, being hunted after all. You may begin to feel helpless and hopeless. You may start to wonder why you even read this stupid story, and why you were stupid enough to follow through with it. But you don't quit. You aren't a quitter. You keep running because you are a survivor. Or maybe you don't keep running. You do quit. You turn around, grab your flashlight, and head back home, kicking yourself in the ass the whole way for being gullible enough to believe a spooky story that you read online. Goodbye. You are done now. I hope you enjoyed injecting a little thrill in your dull, tedious life. If this does not describe you, proceed to the next step. Step 4. Making the crossing. Undoubtedly, your run will be halted at some point. Continue making that map in your brain, because the hard part is about to begin. Most of the time, you will come across a barrier of some kind, like a short wall, a fence, a dusty path, maybe even something as simple as a fallen tree. Most of the time, however, the barrier presents itself in the form of a stream or riverbed. This is your last chance to turn back. The naked witch will be waiting on the other side of whatever barrier she has presented you with. You might even be able to see her, a ghastly, hunched crone. She carries a twisted walking stick in one hand and wears nothing, save for a patient smile. If you can't see her, don't worry too much. She can see you. It is time to cross. Climb, swim, crawl, sprint, do whatever is required to get to the other side. You will hear voices telling you to turn back along the way. They will plead and scream and beg if you don't listen. And you won't listen. You are almost there. During the crossing, it may seem as though time is distorted. It may feel like you will never get to the other side. You may start suffering from bouts of confusion and paranoia. Just keep walking. Everything will be fine. For now. Once you make it to the other side, you will see a dilapidated house. Now would probably be a good time to draw whatever weapon you have brought, lest you forgot it in the turbulence of future events. Step 5. Receiving your prize. Approach the door of the house slowly. You might still hear the whispers mentioned in the previous steps, but it is too late to turn back even if you wanted to. Things are not as they appear. Once you have reached the door, you will notice an unbroken line of salt in the shape of a semicircle, with ends touching either side of the door frame. Brush away some of the salt to break the line, and knock 6 times on the door, and wait. If nothing happens, knock another 6 times. Repeat until you hear the door unlock or it opens completely for you. You made it. But it is not time to pat yourself on the back. You need to get your prize. The naked witch will be somewhere within the interior of the house, and you will need to do some searching to find her. Check each room, closet, and corner. Look under furniture, beds, tables, and anywhere else the average-sized adult could fit. Don't get distracted. And for the love of God, avoid looking into any books or at any pictures you may find. Once you have found her, she will ask you why you have invaded her home, and what you could possibly need. Try to limit communication if at all possible. Simply tell her you have come for your prize. You have probably been asking yourself what the point of all this is. Why would anyone go out of their way to put themselves in a situation like this? What kind of reward is worth all the trouble? To see what happens next, the witch will offer you a deal. She will give you the chance to peer into the future in the form of a single answered question. Obviously, it would behoove you to apply some margin of consideration to your question beforehand. Asking general questions, especially ones beginning with why, will most likely yield unsatisfying results. This isn't the time to get philosophical. You can expect your answer to be short, sweet, and to the point. But more importantly, it will be truthful. No deception. This isn't a deal with the devil, after all. There are conditions to this though, as one might expect. What's the fun in giving any idiot that wanders into the woods a free ticket to see into the future? Before answering your question, the naked witch will inform you that she is short-handed, and would love to have some help around her property. But don't worry, she has made a replacement for you. The naked witch has spent the entirety of your time in her woods, crafting your doppelganger. A mirror image of you fitted with even the smallest quirks that make you who you are. The only thing the other you is missing is the memory of the previous hour or so. You will be informed that the moment you receive your answer, your double will make a break for it and try to find their way to safety. Only one of you will be allowed to leave her woods though. The other will stay for as long as their soul allows, left to wander in her crossing. Step 6. Staying alive. For some, this will be easy. Driven by morbid curiosity, some won't even blink while they chase and ultimately dispatch their double. They came for a reason. They got their prize, and they will do anything to convince themselves that the whole ordeal was worth it. For others, this is the hardest part of the ritual. Your double is, for all intents and purposes, you. They share your fear, your cunning, your will to survive. They are an animal just like you, hell-bent on living. As far as they know, they simply got lost in the woods, misplaced their flashlights, and are being chased by some unknown predator. Though it is a hard pill to swallow, most of us are capable predators, if pushed to extremes. Whether we like that fact or not, most will at least attempt to stop their double. Some will plead, others will simply try to break from the woods first. Yet another group of individuals will gaze their mimic in the eyes and choke, stab, beat, batter, strangle, cut, cleave, mash, break, and destroy. Would have to in order to survive, knowing full well the fear and pain they are essentially inflicting upon themselves. Here we have another divergence. In one story, you venture into the woods. Lost and alone, you scan through the gallery of trees. You suck in the stiff night air, and brace yourself as you drop your only source of light. Caught in the darkness, you run with your heart pounding. Pounding in your ears, until you reach a clearing. A barrier of some kind cuts through the landscape, separating where you are from and where you will be. You note it, absorb its warnings to return, and surmount the crossing. Once over, you find a house, rotten from years of nature's various abuses. Yet it still possesses a draw that pulls you in. You knock on the ancient door and step inside. You meet a woman. You ask a question. You get an answer, and you start to run for your life. You kill that which threatens to kill your story. It's your story, and none others. Having paid close attention to your previous route, you backtrack, and before long you bust through another clearing to find you are back where it had all begun. You knew this ending though, and you are back safe and sound, but different. You are forever different, and you tell the story to no one, until one day, your answer comes true. Someone you love returns from a camping trip, and tells you a familiar tale, the other side of the divergence. You know the ending, however. There are no twists to the story. They tell you the story of the Naked Widow's Hollow. They tell you they woke up in the night and decided to get some more firewood for their slowly dying campfire. They say that at some point, they lost their bearings and couldn't find their way back. Luckily, they had brought their fancy shock-resistant flashlights. As fate would have it though, they must have dropped it just in the wrong way and it breaks. They are looking around in the underbrush, in the dark, alone, and they hear something. At first it is distant and subtle, but the sound draws closer. Something is chasing them, and they start to run again. They are too scared to even look back to see what is pursuing them. It is getting closer, closer, and closer. Just when they think they are done for, they pop out of the trees. And wouldn't you believe it, they were right back at camp. They turn around to face their predator, but nothing is there. The woods are quiet, save for the croaking of frogs and the gurgle of a nearby creek. They tell you that some people say that the witch used to live in a nearby hollow, and her ghost hunts those woods, skulking about in the dark, looking for wayward hikers to lure into her trap. For most people, the Ouija board comes from the concept patented in 1890, considered a parlor trick to scam people out of money to talk to their loved ones, and also as a way for kids to have fun. The game itself is pretty harmless. While there are plenty of ways to create a spirit board, what most people don't know is that there are spirit boards in practically every home. During my life, I have studied plenty of lore involving spirits, cryptozoology, paranormal investigations, and everything in between. It's not an easy life in the slightest. Sometimes I honestly wish I would have never started studying things like this, but it is what it is. I see it as a service to help those that don't know anything about paranormal things, by investigating and helping those that have no idea what to do or how to deal with things that they can't understand themselves. We now live in an age of technology and disbelief in most myths and legends, but I promise you that those same myths and legends haven't and won't forget about you. What if I told you that there could be someone or something looking at you right now, not by your webcam or smartphone camera, pointed at you via hacks or anything like that, but rather by the very myths that people forget about? Let's get into the lesson for today. Ouija boards are still played as toys, and for fun by everyone. Even here on Reddit you can find hundreds of stories about how people have been possessed by a demon or ghost from playing with a Ouija board. Some are pretty legit, some are just for entertainment and shouldn't be taken seriously. However, what people seem to forget is that a spirit board isn't a simple cardboard game that has been around for only a few decades. No, it is much older and easier to talk to spirits. Mirrors. Really, any reflective surface can be used as a spirit board with the proper conditions. For centuries, the act of having a mirror was seen as a status symbol, for only the wealthy could afford such a luxury as seeing themselves. Just around the same time, we got reports of seeing something at the edge of the mirror, a shadow or just a quick dash from something or someone you can't quite see. It can also be found in stories from calm rivers, lakes, and even puddles. Grand tales from shiny silver or golden shields, the same thing. We see things that we otherwise just can't see in mirrors. Scientifically, they call it pareidolia, or the ability of our minds to see faces in places that there are just no faces. While I do respect science, I also believe that there are some things that we are still behind in discovering. The other side awaits for us in mirrors. I had just gotten home from school and my parents were still at work. As any kid in the 90s would tell you, that means I could enjoy the TV, with any snack I wanted without being yelled at. As I was making me some Lunchables, I heard a small tapping. Thinking it was my friend or maybe an animal tapping to be let in, I went to the door. No one. Probably a pebble or a leaf, as it was a windy day. So I sat down and turned on the TV. But in that split second that I looked up and pressed the button, I saw a person standing behind me, behind the couch. The TV flickered on and I turned around to see if my dad had gotten home early from work. No one again. Just imagining things, I thought to myself. Finally, my parents got home and we had dinner together in front of the TV, telling each other about our days. I heard that tapping again, and I asked if anyone else heard it, but no one had. I brushed my teeth. I saw that my towel behind me was shaking. Reaching out to it, I felt a cold chill down my spine. The air conditioner had turned on. The towel just caught the air is all, I thought. Getting ready for bed, I heard the tapping behind me as I closed the bathroom door. I stopped and listened. It tapped again. Turning on my light, I looked outside my window and door, thinking that my parents were saying goodnight. Once again, no one was there. There was never anyone. In later years, I was talking to my parents about things that happened in my youth. The kind of stories that you tell your parents once you are too old for them to get mad at you, and stuff like that. When we somehow got into the conversation about the knocking that I would hear, Mom asked me if it was coming from a mirror. I hadn't even thought about that. She then began to tell me how her grandmother used to tell her that when you own a mirror, you should always cover it up if you hear a knocking coming from nowhere. Continuing on that the knocking comes from the other people, to lure people towards the mirror so they can cross over. I decided to look into those stories and found out that there are stories out there about mirrors being used as spirit boards to communicate with the dead and other creatures. Cultures from all over the world have superstitions about how mirrors should never be used while sad. Others have myths about how a broken mirror not only brings you years of bad luck, but also releases the spirits being held back by the complete mirror. But all stories have a theme to them. Mirrors are not just mirrors. You see, even in the scientific field, there is the thought of multiple realities. The idea of there being an infinite amount of reality or alternate realms is a very real scientific theory. Imagine there being another version of you somewhere out there, doing the same things that you do, but just a small bit differently. You decide to cut your hair, another version of you decided to dye it instead of cutting it. The versions of you are infinite, if you stop to think about it. But with mirrors, there is always the chance that you could see that version of you, or something else. You see, alternate realities aren't just different versions of you. They could also be places that never had a you. Ouija boards don't just talk to spirits or demons. They are windows into other places. Except that you focus the communication into one place, the board itself, so that you can talk to someone or something on the other side. Mirrors being in a fixed location tend to collect energy from not only you, but from all the different versions of you. Because when we place a mirror, we tend to leave it in one spot. It just hangs there so you can use it anytime you are near it. Sometimes you hear or see something, almost as if you aren't alone in that room with the mirror. Now here's the part that people forget. It's not just mirrors anymore. Now we have TVs that stay in one area, smartphones that we carry with us at all times, with a very reflective screen. You at this very moment are probably staring into a screen, while many different versions of you are doing the same, charging that surface. Now think how many times you have walked past a mirror and swore you saw someone looking back at you, or that knocking that you heard. Cover your mirrors, move your mirrors, avoid that knocking. Good luck. This story is pretty mild in the grand scheme of things. However, I feel it is worth sharing because perhaps a few may be able to see why this was so creepy. As I've stated before, I live in a very small town, and for the majority of my life, always have. One night when I was around the age of 15, my friends and I were hanging out in front of my buddy's place on Main Street. Now mind you, Main Street is only about 5 blocks long, lined with old shops with apartments sitting on top of them. It was roughly 1 a.m., and we were on the sidewalk playing hacky sack. 10 hack whack to be exact. Which if you don't know, 10 hack whack is where you kick the hacky sack around until it's been hit 10 times, and then someone can catch it out of the air and hit someone else with it, eliminating them from the game. You play until there is one person left. In the middle of our game, I notice a man standing in the middle of the street, about 2 blocks away looking in our direction. He was wearing a black hoodie and wasn't moving at all. Being a very unlit street, the sight was ominous. I pointed him out to my friends in hopes that I wasn't going insane. Luckily, or unluckily, however you'd like to view the situation, they saw him as well. We started talking to each other trying to figure out if any of us knew him, and why he'd just be standing there. One of our friends trying to weird us out, maybe. One of my friends then decides to yell at him in a manner I'm sure you could all assume. The man then starts walking towards us. Of course, being a bunch of teenagers, most of us start joining in with taunting him. Not a proud moment. But I was 15, and the man was being weird, so take that how you will. Once the man gets within about a block of us, we see a police cruiser pull up next to him and slam on his brakes. Now all of us had our full attention focused on the situation. The man booked it to a nearby alleyway, as the cop then turned on his lights and went after him. We never did find out what happened. We asked the officer the next day, but he refused to share details, which was bizarre for the simple fact that we talked with the police officer pretty frequently, since we had a somewhat close bond with him. Even though we were somewhat troublemakers at the time, I think he liked us because we made his job more entertaining. In a fun way, since the worst we would really do is climb buildings or walk around past curfew. Not that I would recommend that, but it was a small town and all that jazz. I never put much thought into the event, but now that I'm a bit older, I can't help but wonder what would have happened had he gotten to us. I know none of my friends are fighters, and we would have just went inside. Yes, I know, 15. What if he had followed us in? What if he had a weapon? I guess I'll never really know, and I'm thankful for that. Moral of the story is don't be a moron, because people are unpredictable.